Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. Jeannine, it's unfortunate that it is episode 69 today. We can't get around it. We have to deal with it. So we've decided naturally to do a movie that's got absolutely nothing to do with the typical situations you would find in an episode 69 of any sort of show. Would it be fair to say that we have done exactly that?
Yes, very fair.
We've gone completely the opposite.
We're so appropriate here at It's a Wonderful Podcast.
I mean, I'd like to think we are. Because today we are talking about 1925's Phantom of the Opera. We are going back silent, and for a third silent movie that we've ever done on the show, and naturally, because it's me, our third silent horror. You've never done a silent non-horror on this show, but it is the first one since last October, so okay. I'm very happy about that. Yeah, 1925's Phantom of the Opera, Lon Chaney as the Phantom, Mary Philbin as Christine. First of all, I think it's important to say, and we found this out absolutely, didn't we?
We did.
Well, this movie production-wise and
it's very
complex
and complicated.
Yeah, is a big old mess. We always say Phantom of the Opera 1925, but I believe that a lot of what we actually watch now is footage that was shot in 1929. But 25 was when the original cut premiered and was released, so we always say
25.
Phantom of the Opera 25. But yeah, because, I mean, Lon Chaney couldn't even come back for the sound reissue that was done in 1929, so they had to intercut just the old scenes with him in, with
and
new stuff.
They couldn't even dub over his voice because he was about to do his first talking film with the other studio that he went to, and they wouldn't let them do that. So
yeah, so this is a universal horror movie, as many of the great old American horror movies are. Lon Chaney in 1925 actually moved to MGM because, of course, at this time actors were contracted to studios, and there's some positives that came out of that and some negatives that came out of that, as we all, I'm sure, are aware of, or if we're not aware of, go and read up on the studio system. It's kind of really interesting, because that was when you got movie stars, to be honest with you. I think the studio system did such a good job in crafting a movie star. However, of course, didn't do such a good job in allowing people their freedoms.
Yes. I would love to see. I'm sure there must be some kind of documentary out there on that, because that seems like a very interesting topic.
Absolutely, there is. I couldn't tell you what that would be or what the name of it would be, but guaranteed there is some sort of documentary out there about the studio system and the way it worked. Probably multiple documentaries on that particular subject matter. But yeah, Lon Chaney, the man with 1,000 faces, or the man of 1,000 faces, known as such by the public for this role as the Phantom of the Opera, and also most notably in the Hunchback of Notre Dame from 1923, which was also a Universal movie. Now that movie is 2.5 hours long. I've never seen I've never seen 1923's Hunchback of Notre Dame. In fact, the only version of Hunchback of Notre Dame I've seen is the one
The
that
Disney
everybody
version.
has probably seen. Which is a shame because I'd like to go and I'd like to watch the 23 version because obviously me being me,
Yes. I'm like, of course you would.
I like to expand my viewing of silent movies, mainly horror.
Of course you want
If
to
not
watch a 2.5 hour silent film.
the thing is that it's the length of that that's actually putting me off it, which is not something you would find usual with me, but that is a long time to watch a silent movie. And
Yes.
I want to get your thoughts first of all on silent movies really and just how they feel so different.
Well, I've never really watched a silent movie like all the way through. So this was my first silent film.
Wow.
Yes. So, I mean, I have always kind of said I'm a fan of visual storytelling and how it's done and how just with actions mostly you can kind of convey emotions and things like that. I really appreciate stuff like that. So I went into it kind of thinking like I would enjoy it because I'm a very visual person. So, I mean, yes, there's going to be little title cards kind of explaining what people are saying, but it was interesting to see like them having that freedom to be super emotive and like exaggerate gestures to get the points across and get the emotions across. So it was kind of fun to see that compared to like talking movies where, you know, you can kind of shout and exclaim and
Yeah.
all of that. But here you kind of just have to do that with your emotions to get the point across. So I appreciated that they kind of had to push things differently to get you to understand what was happening.
Yeah, I mean it's very theatrical.
Yes.
And it is exactly the kind of theatrics that I really like in my horror movies. People can go on as much as they want about, oh, this particular horror movie was so subtle and so really got under your skin. But the ones I love watching the most are the ones where people are absolutely crazy and they're just throwing themselves around. That's why I like Vincent
Yes.
Price so much because he's the most theatrical human being.
Yes. Yeah, like so it can come off a little bit silly, but you kind of get into it because you realize, well, yeah, they have to emote so
There's no
much.
other way. There's no other
Yeah,
way of doing it.
exactly. So when something dramatic's happening, they're like flopping themselves all around. And
Yeah.
normally that would be completely ridiculous, but because you're realizing, okay, this is how acting was, this is how it is, because you can't use your words, you have to use your emotions, your body, and all of that, your
Well,
expressions.
that's why so many people struggled transitioning from silent movies to talking pictures in the late 20s when the invention of sound movies happened.
Yes.
Because they were so used to acting a certain way, and now it's brought up in a great sequence in Singing in the Rain.
In the
Actually,
rain.
which Singing in the Rain,
I was just gonna say that.
because Singing in the Rain, I think, is the perfect movie to tell the story of the transition,
Of the
from
transition.
silent to
Yes.
talkies.
Because in like just knowing of Singing in the Rain, I didn't even know that it addressed that. So when I watched it for the first time and I saw that, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I never really thought about how an actress who's so popular, you know, because of her looks and how she can convey things. And then when she actually has to talk and she's got a crazy voice like this, she can't really be that star anymore because her voice is so graining and annoying. And
Yeah.
how that, you know, how does that transition work? What is she going to do now? Because, yeah, she's having to do something that she didn't have to do. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I was just going to bring that up. That's
I mean, obviously we see with Gene Kelly's Don Lockwood in that as well. The fact that he in those scenes, there's a reason that movie that they do gets absolutely panned, because he's just being way too
Way
over
too much.
theatrical
Yeah.
for a talking movie, and
Yeah.
the microphones are all off, and it's really funny. Obviously, we don't get. Obviously, that's not really relevant to Phantom of the Opera or Lon Chaney at all, because sadly Lon Chaney died in 1930 before
After doing
he
that
was
talking movie, that his first
yeah
talking movie.
after doing one talking role, but of course in the studio of Universal, his son became a horror icon in his own right as the Wolfman, and well, he actually played all of them. He's the only actor to play all four big Universal monsters.
Really? I
Lon
learn
Chaney
something
Jr.
new every time I come to this show.
Yeah, started off with a Wolfman in 1941. Played Dracula, played Frankenstein's monster, and played the Mummy in the Versus movies and the Frankenstein meets the Wolfman movies. Yeah, he found his way to play all four of them.
Wow.
And I like Lon Chaney Jr. He really does look like his dad. Because if you look at picture, obviously you can't tell from watching Phantom of the Opera. Because if anybody looked like Lon Chaney does in Phantom of the Opera, you'd be questioning what the hell was going on.
How are they even a movie star?
Yeah. But they really look similar, and I like that. Lon Chaney Jr., of course, also shows up in one of my favourite movies, Vincent Price's The Haunted Palace from 1963, which I really like that movie. But back on to The Phantom, and yeah, I think with silent movies, there's obviously the music is very important as well. And I think the awkward thing with this particular movie is that you can watch so many different little changes of versions of it.
With different music.
You kind of really need to find one that actually, has fully synchronized sound. The actual film quality is good, because there's prints that look good but very, very grainy, and there's other prints that look like legitimate. These are the prints that that have been they've been worked on for the Blu-rays and the
restored
DVDs and restored and all that stuff, and that's great. You're just got to be careful with which sort of version you find, because I think a viewing experience of this one can be really affected by which particular version you find, because there's so many of these little weird differences. Like there's one version with colour scenes.
Yeah. Like if things aren't synced
strange.
up, if the music isn't synced, if there's not music in places, it can all kind of like how it's cut can affect kind of the pacing of it. So yeah, it all kind of depends. It's a big mishmash with this one. It's kind of all like cut and pasted together.
And like we said before, you can't actually watch the 1925 theatrical release of this movie on its own. You cannot watch that. There is inevitably going to be something from 1929 that was shot in 1929 in there,
mixed in there. Yeah.
And this is where it really gets weird. They actually used two cameras
side
to
by
shoot
side.
the original movie.
Yeah. So there's slightly different
print.
angles. Yeah.
Yeah. But and then you might think, oh, okay, so one camera was used to film one particular everything, and then this other camera was used to film, from this angle, and each camera had its own film print. Oh no, that has since been mishmashed together, and some versions have this angle, and some versions have this angle.
And
It's
different
very
takes
strange.
and yeah,
I
alternate
would just
takes. Yeah, it's a
alternate
mess.
takes. We've already spoke about the fact that Lon Chaney couldn't come
Come
back
back
and dub
to
his lines
yeah,
for the 29th, so he's silent where there's
while everyone else is
many other
talking.
people speaking.
So they had to make a character that would come and speak for him when he was in the shadows and stuff.
Yeah, like the Phantom's assistant or whatever that character ends up being called. I personally didn't watch a version with
No.
the Phantom's assistant. I watched the pure silent version. With colour, mine did have a colour scene in the ball when the Phantom comes down in his bright red cloak and his floppy hat and his skeleton
Face
face,
mask. Yeah.
and it's very 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 theatrical. And I think what is really interesting and I think impressive about the actual story of Phantom of the Opera is that it's very well balanced between a horror, a romance, and a bit of a mystery story.
Yeah.
Particularly in the book. I've read the book. I think the book really balances those three very, very well, even though it's kind of a slow read for being such a short book.
Yeah.
That might be the specific translation I own, because obviously it's a French book,
Yeah.
but I don't know. But this movie definitely balanced, well, it definitely balanced two of them very well. The horror and the romance. It wasn't too concerned with like the book is, for example, it wasn't too concerned with the two owners of the opera house, the new owners, and their sort of the mystery with them and trying to find
Trying
out
to figure out what's going on. Yeah.
what's going on, who the Phantom is, and all that business. It wasn't too focused on that. It was very, very much, we've got Lon Chaney here, we're going to make the most of him.
Yeah.
We're going to give him all the scenes and let him do whatever crazy makeup he wants to do to himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so you said this is your first silent movie.
Yes.
So that would mean it's also the oldest movie you've ever watched.
Yes.
By how many years?
I think I've seen things from at least the 30s or 40s, like the late 30s, early 40s, I want to say.
I've no Universal monster movies.
I've only seen
None.
Frankenstein. That's
Oh,
it.
so that's good. So that's
Yeah.
31.
Yeah.
So there you go. So you're only 6 years out. So, no, this is good. This is what I like. This is excellent. Because with silent horror, obviously, you've got your two main players when it comes to silent horror, right? You've got mainly, you've got European, mainly Germany, and you've got the US. Naturally, you have the US whenever it comes to anything sort of competition with movies.
Yeah.
But obviously the US had Lon Chaney, which was big. It was a
Yeah.
big deal. It was box office wise, it was probably, by far and away the winner, with stuff like Hunchback of Notre Dame and this movie in particular, because obviously when it was reissued with sound, it was also re-released and
Yeah.
grossed another million,
Yeah, whatever.
however much it did. However, there's a real significant difference between European silent horror and American silent horror. Now, like I
How
said,
so?
this is actually the first American silent horror I have watched.
Really? So what are the
because
differences?
European is so much more visually interesting.
Okay.
Like, because obviously with German expressionism, with, your Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu and the Golem and stuff like that, even though the Golem's less expressionist. But particularly Caligari, you can just look at any frame of Caligari and just be weirded out and what the hell's going on, and
Yeah.
it's very, very entertaining because of that.
Yeah.
It's a great story as well. I think Caligari is actually a fantastic story, and it's probably my favourite silent movie. And I'm not saying that as though I've seen dozens and dozens of them, but I've seen maybe in total 8 to 10 silent movies.
Three of them being
Caligari's
horror.
what? 4 of them.
Okay.
4 of them. 3 of them that we've done on this show.
Oh, okay.
5 of them being horror. A few of them being horror. Which is unsurprising for me, though, right?
No surprise there.
So yeah, when it comes to European stuff, it feels very much more visually interesting, and there's more sort of artsiness gone into it. And I like that about silent horror because it heightens the theatricality of it, and it makes it feel like just a moving painting. This movie feels like a movie. It feels like a movie without sound.
There's no like stunning, like interesting visuals or anything like that. It's just like your set and your marks and yeah.
What was quite surprising to me as well is that it was, aside from obviously the famous unmasking the Phantom scene where Lon Chaney sort of screams his
turns to the camera kind of like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody, in the audience dies or faints or whatever they did in 25. I believe many fainted, which is understandable, really, because he doesn't look the nicest person.
No.
It's very, very... We'll get on to the very impressive makeup of Lon Chaney. But yeah, it does feel like, aside from that scene, a pretty standard movie.
Yeah, and it felt kind of like a play.
Yeah.
It was staged and everything.
Yeah. Probably helps the fact that it's set in a opera house, in a theatre.
Yeah.
Invoke that sort of feeling. But it's strange to me that there was no real sort of... Because I always think, when it comes to like I said, because I'm so familiar with European silent horror, when I watch a silent horror movie, I'm looking for really interesting visuals or really sort of cool lighting or just some great cinematography. This is not great cinematography. This is just standard kind of movie making.
Yeah, so it's more about the story here as opposed to the visuals.
It's more about the story, and it's way more about the fact that Lon Chaney's in it.
Yes, like the Phantom is kind of a big focus because I've seen the 2004 like version based on the play. I've also seen the stage play, and yeah, it was all not as much around the Phantom as it was about Christine and the romance with her and Raoul and the theater stuff. Yeah. He was just kind of a looming presence while everything in the theater was happening.
It's very much the same in the book. Which does make sense why this movie will do that, though. Because with Lon Chaney, obviously you're going to focus on him because he was such a huge name.
Yeah.
In movies at that time. And it's clear to see why, because he, again, performance-wise, and I suppose there's only so much you can say about a silent performance, but you believe him entirely.
Yeah.
He's very emotive. He's very talented in his movements and his expressions, and obviously his own personal makeup effects that he applied to himself is insane.
Yeah, that was really good, creepy, scary. Like, and he could still kind of do things, it seemed like, through that crazy
Yeah,
face.
but famously, obviously, pulling his nose back with wires
Yeah. So then
and
when you see all the
just
little
really
title cards
hurting
of
himself.
people describing him, oh, he has no nose. Like that was said, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times before we even see him. But and I also liked that you kind of actually got to see him revealed so early on. I think that did some interesting things for the pacing
Yeah.
as
Okay.
opposed to like other versions that I've seen because, like the newer version does have that, take the mask off scene, but you still don't see the fucked up side of his face. So, like, you don't get that until like the very end of the movie, essentially.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, you just said side of his face. I suppose in the musical, it's
Yeah,
kind of only
just
the
one side because
like.
it's much more artsy and theatrical to have that mask because now that mask is kind of like an iconic thing.
It's also kind of more. Well, I suppose it's more focused on the romance as well. That
Yeah, so you
version.
want him to have like a sexy Gerard Butler side of his face.
Yeah, sure you do. And we'll we'll have a little bit of deja vu, I think. Here. If Jeannine would be so kind as to offer
Of
a
course.
an installment of deja vu. Do you want to do the jingle?
Uh,
Should I do the jingle? Deja
deja
vu,
vu,
deja vu,
deja vu, deja
deja
vu.
vu, deja vu. Yay! There you go. There's the jingle, Jeannine. Actually, before we get really into it, it's also worth pointing out that, of course, this version that Jeannine's now going to be talking about is very romantic and romanticized, and that's why, you only have the half thing. Of course, Phantom 25, very much horror, first and
Full
foremost.
face, yeah, full
It
creepy,
is,
scary face.
first and foremost, it is a shock movie. So you just say, Lon, go and work your makeup magic. He says, okay, and then comes back looking like that. So you say, right, perfect.
Let's do
What we're
this.
going to do is we're going to unmask you and you're going
Pretty
to
early
terrify the
on.
world. Yeah, it's
Yes.
after like half an hour, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously the 25 one focuses very much on horror. The book is kind of more mystery. And this version that Jeannine is talking about is more romantic. Like we said, there's not only a lot of versions of the original Lon Chaney movie, but there's also a lot of versions of adaptations of this. And
Yes.
it's a story that's been thrown around so much.
A lot.
You just
But
gotta find your version and stick with it if you enjoy it, I think.
I think so.
But yes,
But
go ahead.
I think seeing the 2004 version kind of helped me and kind of maybe developed the characters more in the original because I mean they kind of just a character shows up and then you just get kind of a title card like, oh hey, I'm Raul and this is this
Yeah.
guy's trying to steal my girl. Like, okay, that's your introduction. Like, who are you? Where did you come from? In the version I saw, they actually kind of go into his backstory. Him and Christine were like childhood kind of like sweethearts. Like, when she lived with her father, they grew up next door to each other and would play games and all kinds of things together. And then her father died, and then subsequently, like, they parted ways or whatever. So when she steps up to kind of be the lead singer in this
In the
opera house, he is a patron of the opera house, so then he sees her and he remembers her from childhood, and that's kind of, they have this whole backstory, so that's why the romance is so like strong, and because it's been developed since they were children and they're seeing each other again for the first time in forever. So you get all that kind of backstory to build on the romance in the musical. So when they just kind of showed Raoul, and you're just supposed to be like, oh, okay, so they're, yeah, they seem to know each other, and she's his girl, but you never really saw them interact before this moment. They just show him, and so so I kind of just put that whole backstory into my head to kind of just go with it, and that kind of worked with the pacing for this one. It just kind of flowed, and you got kind of your events happening back to back to back to back. So whereas this one, of course, it's a musical, so you have your little numbers, and most people aren't really. So like this one, there's not talking, but this new one, there's really not that much talking either, because they're pretty much singing all their talking.
Okay.
Because it's not a musical where there's a lot of dialogue and then you just break into a song. Like a lot of the conversations are songs, a lot of the just general talking are songs. There's a whole scene with the two opera house owners, and they're getting the letters from the Phantom, and they're like singing the letters. They're singing what the letters are saying. And then like, instead of Cornata, is that her name? The woman who was like the lead singer before. Carlotta. Instead of her mother coming in, it's actually her. And she's coming in with her letter and singing about, how dare you send this letter to me? And then Raoul's coming in, how dare you send this letter to me? And they all think that they're sending the letters to each other, but it's really the Phantom. And instead of actually just having a conversation about it, they're singing the whole conversation. So it's kind of comparative in that way, that this one has no talking. This one also really doesn't have that much talking. It's all kind of sung conversations.
Well, it certainly sounds like there's also a little bit more influence of the book in the musical. Even though both these versions certainly take elements from that book, but like you said, if the musical's focused, you get a lot more of Raoul and Christine.
Yes.
And you get a bit more mystery. You get all those letters being, back and forth, and the confusion with the letters that's not really in Phantom 25.
Yeah. But unlike,
you just kind of get the letters, and it's supposed to creep you out that there's a phantom writing letters.
Yeah, but when the Phantom looks like Gerard Butler, like, you're not afraid.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, and he's just mysterious, and like, you're just like, okay, hey. Like, it's not scary. Like, there's a part where he actually, like, they're doing a performance on stage, and there's a guy who's kind of like creeping around looking for him, and he doesn't like that, so he like finds the man and like hangs him and drops his body like in the middle of the stage while they're doing a performance. So stuff like that is kind of creepy, but other than that, it wasn't very terrifying.
That's a book thing.
Yeah, where he finds the guy and strangles him and stuff. But I also saw kind of little nods, like, I think maybe of appreciation for this one, because like even like little things, like I noticed the envelopes that he used in the new one were the same envelopes in the 25 one. And like the bed, like when she kind of sees that room that he has, like the thing
his little house at the lake.
Yeah, like, and she faints, like he puts her in a bed, and that bed is exactly the same bed in the new one. So like I feel like they just tried to like put little nuggets in there of like, okay, this is what inspired this. So
I just wanted to mention that that hanging also happens in 25, but it's just a shadow.
Yeah, but this one you actually see the guy, like, yeah. So I mean, you see him like kill people and stuff, but it's not really like, because he's just too hot to be scary.
It's too romantic Gerard Butler to kill anyone.
Yeah, he's got
this is not action movie Gerard Butler yet.
Yeah,
is what you're telling me. No, it's interesting to, realize just how different this story can be adapted. And obviously the musical is so popular on stage.
Oh,
And
yeah.
has been for 30 years or however long it's been on for. Probably 35 years now at this point. Maybe. But I like the fact that all the dialogue in that is singing, because obviously it's an opera, really.
Yeah.
And that's what an opera is. The whole thing is singing, so that's cool. I like that.
Yes.
Going back to the pace, though, of 25, it really does flow very quickly.
Yeah.
It is not it's some people may be put off watching silent movies because of boredom. You won't be bored watching Phantom of the Opera. It's too quick.
Yeah, like it goes through the beats very well. It kind of sets up, okay, she meets the Phantom, this happens. He lets her be kind of free, but still in the opera house. She meets up with Raoul. Their love kind of happens, even though it's not supposed to. And, he's looming and watching and killing people all along the way. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in all these beats. There's kind of a lot happening. There's always something happening.
The Phantom, or Eric, should we call him Eric? Should we humanise him?
Yes, okay.
Eric is, he's just upset because Christine is is essentially supposedly running off with Raoul. He's in the book in particular, he's very sort of sympathetic in that way.
I was gonna say that, like, yeah, even in this musical one, he's a little bit more sympathetic, and the ending is completely different. Like, you actually kind of pity him a little bit. Like, there's that kind of tortured monster kind of like Quasimodo, Frankenstein's monster kind of vibe where there's some redeeming qualities. Like you kind of see the only reason he's like that is because he was treated so poorly. Like there's a whole line in one of the songs where, his face earned disgust from his mother as a child, and so that's why he was abandoned. And so like you get this stuff that makes you kind of feel for him. So in the end, even though like he's tried to kill Raoul and he has Christine and Raoul trapped, she sees like his anguish and his pain, and that he's just kind of been hurt and made to turn into this kind of monster who kills and does all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so she sympathizes with him, she kisses him, and then he kind of realizes, okay, I'm just going to let her go. So he actually lets her go, and then he kind of gets away. And as the mob is coming for him, he kind of goes behind a curtain, and we don't see him, and you don't see the mob find him. So he kind of gets away. So I liked that there was that sympathetic kind of like, tortured monster, redemptive kind of vibe that we didn't really get in the 25 one. He's just...
Yeah.
They tried to humanize him by giving him a name and kind of saying that, society made him this way and things like that. But you still didn't kind of get that whole full circle moment of him kind of having something that made him, redeemable, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like that, to be honest. I like a more sympathetic Phantom. Because, like you said, it does remind you of Frankenstein's monster or of Quasimodo. And it's funny, really, to realise that, Lon Chaney's other most famous role is Quasimodo.
Quasimodo, yeah.
But in sort of both of them, I'm led to believe, at least in 23's Hunchback of Notre Dame, it is also very much about the fact that Quasimodo looks grotesque and the fact that he looks, he's a monster. He does have the sympathy, and, there is a little bit of that in Phantom. There is. It's just clear that the actual overall production's focus is to scare people.
And want to, like, have it be this kind of creepy monster movie.
Yeah. Which is, I'm led to believe is very much the same in Hunchback 1923, where there's the sympathy, but it's kind of also all about, disturbing people and scaring people.
Yeah. But for
and
me,
showing off
actually,
Lon Chaney's makeup.
that's like, for me, surprisingly, who I like romance, and I like had just talked about how much I liked that kind of tortured monster with some kind of redeemable quality. My favorite parts of the 25 version are like the scary parts when, he grabs that guy's legs and pulls him,
Yeah.
and then you just kind of see his shadow, and Christine's thinking, "Oh, this is my master," da 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 da, and like she doesn't see, you just see the looming shadow of him kind of talking to her, and then the reveal of the I was expecting that, but still it was very shocking. So like all the moments that I really liked about this movie were like kind of the scary, shocking kind of moments.
Which
Even
is
though it
good,
departed
because
from
that's what they were
things that
going
I
for.
actually liked in the 2004 version.
But I suppose that's the good thing about adaptations, is the fact that if something is, from a production standpoint, if something is said to, okay, we're going to go for a romantic Phantom of the Opera in this film version, and if that works, then it's perfect.
Yeah.
Like you said, in 25, we're going to go for a scary version, and if it works, like it does, it's perfect. It's, that's exactly what sort of remakes are for.
Yeah.
Change it up a little bit, make it different. You look at Dracula and stuff like that. Look at Bram Stoker's Dracula. Very romantic, very theatrical, and it works. It's nothing like Bela Lugosi's Dracula,
Yeah.
but that movie also works. It's just it's the perfect way to remake something.
For the ending, was the book more like this 25 movie or more like the musical in the book?
Do you know what? For some reason, I can't remember. I've been
So
trying
he
to
doesn't
rack
get-
my brain.
He doesn't get Shrek to grab your torch and pitchfork and like thrown in the river.
I've been trying to rack my brain throughout this whole thing because I have read this book. I honestly have. I've been wanting to make some sort of comparison. I've just completely blanked, which is a shame.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Because you were talking about how a lot of the things in the book were similar to the musical. So I'm kind of wondering, does it have that kind of sad ending where like he goes mad and like steals Christine away and then the mob gets him and like throws him in the river? Or does it have the ending where he kind of gets away and...
Maybe I didn't even finish the book. Maybe that's it. Maybe. Do you know what? I think that's it. Maybe I actually didn't finish the book.
You're like me after I actually saw the play in like to high school, junior high.
I have the book like 20 feet away from me now.
You
on
just
the
go
shelf.
read the last page and see.
I actually don't think I even finished the book.
Wow, Morgan.
Still, my points on the tone of the book and some of the stuff that happens is valid because I remember that stuff. So, no, I don't think I did. That's bad of me. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Didn't
well,
finish
no, that was literally like me. Like I saw the play in like junior high, I think high school, maybe like 9th grade. And in watching both versions, like I didn't really remember much about it. Like it was an orchestra trip and all of us wanted to go to Disneyland, but our artsy orchestra teacher was like, no, we're going to go see a play in San Francisco. So we went to go see Phantom of the Opera and all of us were like, nah, we're going to go to Disneyland. Nah. So we go see this play. Yeah.
Immediately you're all annoyed that you're not at
Yes.
Disneyland.
And I think I remember coming out of the play enjoying it, but in going into it, like me and like all my little girlfriends, like we got the program and we see this picture of this guy who's like, and his credit is like stick dancer and he's like super hot. So like the whole play, we're just looking for the stick dancer guy and making jokes about, oh, when's the stick dancer guy coming back? So the only thing I remember about that experience is looking for the hot stick dancer man. So I can understand not remembering things about
That is...
the Phantom of the Opera.
I love that. That's fantastic. What an excellent story. Where's the stick dancer man in Lon Chaney's
I did not see
version, is my
a stick
question.
dancer man in either of these versions. I would think Joel Schumacher would have wanted, with his, bat nipples, would have put a hot stick dancer man in this movie with tight ballet pants. Like, yeah. But
played by Chris O'Donnell.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like there's one other really important part of 1925's Phantom of the Opera to bring up before we kind of wrap up, and that is Mary Philbin.
Yes.
Who plays Christine, who is, as far as I'm concerned, who actually gives the best performance in this movie. Oh, yeah.
Her expressions are perfect. Like, when she first sees him and the fear, and when she's, like, trying to sneak and grab something, and, like, he catches her, and just her loving looks at Ralph. Like, everything, you feel it.
She's really good. And, look, as really impressive as Lon Chaney is, for me, this movie is more about his makeup skills that, are outstanding. I mean, even by any era's standards, to make a face look like that.
Yeah, and still kind of try to emote through that. Yeah.
Yeah, and do it successfully, obviously, because, we keep bringing up the unmasking scene. In that scene, he's so maniacal because he's laughing, he's grabbing her. Yeah. He's, you get the speech title card that's something like, look upon me, look upon my accursed ugliness. Yeah. And he's just laughing, and it's fun. And in that moment, I was just sat there going, yes, yes, this is perfect. But yeah, Mary Philbin really has to get a lot of credit for me with, and that's, I think, what's so good about silent actors as well, is that their eyes are used so well.
Yeah, and I think she had a lot to have to kind of keep up with Lon Chaney, and that makeup to have to kind of work and still be seen and still be, get her emotions and her performance across, dealing with someone who's so talented and, like, having all of that going on. For her to have to kind of try to keep up with that, she did a great job.
Absolutely she did. Applause all round goes to Mary Philbin, and of course Lon Chaney, but Mary Philbin in particular for that most famous scene, which I think that, when it goes from just wonder and what does he look like under this mask?
Yeah, like she gets very kind of excited to go see. Yeah.
We haven't mentioned that the mask itself is terrifying on a Michael Myers level.
Oh, yeah. Like, even with just the mask on, like, it's not hot Gerard Butler with his mask. Like, he's like, hey, mysterious, what's going on over there? Like, no, like, he looks like Silence of the Lambs with the mask on, and then, like...
He looks like... Do you know what he actually does look like? He looks like... He looks like the mascot from Eyes Without a Face. That's just basically eyes just moving on a stiff face. It's really creepy. It's a full face mask. But yeah, it's really creepy. So yeah, Mary Philbin does that, and then goes to immediate to shock, and then to just terror.
Yeah.
And it's just perfect. And yeah, I really liked her throughout this. I thought her romantically was great as well.
Yeah.
Almost with them both, because there's obviously scenes in Christine's dressing room where her, singing master, who turns out to be Eric, when she's kind of really enamored with him because he's helping her
be the
raise
star
her standing
of the
at the opera.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that in the book, by the way. There's a lot of that in the book, of Eric helping Christine and rise her up in the opera, and I really like that stuff in the book. Like I said, I mustn't have actually finished it. I'll have to go and finish it. Stupid Phantom of the Opera, stupid Gaston Leroux. Or maybe it's not stupid Gaston Leroux. Maybe it's the stupid translator who translated Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera to be kind of a really slow read.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who to blame, Jeannine. I'm just going to blame myself. That's probably the most appropriate thing. It's my fault. It's all my fault. But no, like, yeah, the romance, both with Eric and with Raoul, I think is really also very well acted. And I should take this time, because this is a movie that was made in the 1920s. A lot of people had mustaches in the 1920s.
Very fancy ones at that.
There is no better mustache in this whole movie than Raoul de Chagny's mustache. I believe the actor is Norman Kerry.
It's very fancy.
Norman Kerry, who plays
new inductee into
Viscount Raoul de Chagny. Welcome to the Mustache Hall of Fame. Yay! You are officially also the oldest person in the Mustache Hall of Fame.
Congratulations, sir.
I think you're the oldest person in the Mustache Hall of Fame. At least your character probably is. Maybe not actually, because I think there's some sort of... No, that's not true at all, because there's people from like the 1400s in the Mustache Hall of Fame.
Oh, so, goodness.
Yeah. But yay for the Mustache Hall of Fame. Jeannine, is there any other point we want to break about Phantom of the Opera 1925? It's not necessarily the easiest movie to talk a whole lot about. Obviously, we've gone over sort of the era, there's a little bit of the era of silent horror, and it's an era that I love, and, you know, given more of a time and an area to really explore all about silent horror is something that I love to do. To specify it to one movie, as far as I'm concerned, there's only a limited amount of stuff you can actually say, because it's not a complex movie in the slightest way.
Oh, no.
It just so happens that the production of it is very
more complex than the actual story that happens in the movie. But yeah, I mean,
that potentially makes it even harder to talk about as well.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know,
there's so many different versions.
Yeah, people could be watching almost a completely different version with added stuff, with stuff that was taken out, you know, the whole ball scene with the Phantom in his floppy hat and his big cloak is in colour, or it might not be in colour.
The other scene with the floppy hat and the cloak, when he's on top of that statue on the roof and he's just like making his crazy face with his little hat, watching her and Raoul talk about running away together. Like, I'm sorry, that just made me laugh, because he just looked so silly up there, like making that with that crazy face, like, and his cloak is just blowing in the wind, and he's got his little hat on. Like,
Is it the hat that does it?
I think it's the hat.
If he wasn't wearing the hat, would it be fine?
The hat, and you see that crazy face, and he's just like wiggling around on that statue, like I can just picture him making that sound. Like, I don't know. I could not take that seriously, so I got a good chuckle out of that. But I did like the moments that were supposed to be very shocking and scary. Those were really fun. I liked the romance. Like, there were some sweet moments, you know, Raoul just like wiping tears from her face, and
yeah,
I liked the pacing.
The important question to end off with, though, is, does it make you want to go and watch more silent horror movies?
It does. Maybe the ones you were talking about that are more artistic and
the visually interesting European ones.
I would kind of love to see something like that. But I'm very happy this was my first silent film. So thank you, Morgan.
Well, it's such a famous film. It's not a bad place to start.
No.
It's not a bad place to start.
Can check that off my list.
Definitely. I'm sure it's on all those lists of, this is a movie you need to watch before you die and stuff like that. This one's probably on there. And, go and watch this movie. It's a fast-paced movie, and just go and watch it just for that unmasking scene, because in the context of the whole movie, it's such an important scene in movie history. I think it requires viewing. I think for any movie fan, I think I've always said you're not really a real movie fan unless you're willing to go back into history and watch historically important movies.
And find out kind of where things started and what inspired other things. I always find that stuff very interesting.
People can call themselves cinephiles, having never seen a movie from before the 70s. Movies didn't start with The Godfather and Star Wars, so that's always been my little problem, which is, to be honest, why we have this show. All about movies from before that time that people need to go and damn well learn about.
You tell him, Morgan. You tell him.
Exactly. Yes. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. I apologise. Talking The Phantom of the Opera 1925. If you want to check out the other silent horror movies we've done on this, we did a Nosferatu one, and we did a Dr. Caligari one. I think around episode 28 maybe was that time, last October. So go and check them out, because they were really fun, and they're still my two favourite silent horrors. So and if you watch them, it's kind of easy to see why, particularly Caligari. I just think Caligari is such a smart movie. 1920 as well, so it's the oldest of those three that I'm talking about as well. But yeah, Jeannine, what have you got going on? Where can everybody find you? Are you having fun doing teen movies on Morgan Hasn't Seen?
I am having fun. We just started. So, yeah, check out our other show, Morgan Hasn't Seen, on this very podcast feed. This time we are talking about teen movies. So, we just did Bring It On, and we will have Varsity Blues coming next week.
Yeah.
So check it out. You can find me, Jeannine DeBean, on Twitter and Instagram. You can check out my TeePublic shop at G9 Design and get yourself some It's a Wonderful Podcast merch or some Morgan Hasn't Seen merch. You can check out my Patreon at Jeannine LC on patreon.com. You can find my Machine Monday articles on triviasd.com. And you can see me on the Schmodown as Jeannine the Machine on the Movie Trivia Schmodown YouTube channel.
So you're getting very professional with doing all that. And
I am.
I, for one, enjoy that a lot.
You.
Yeah, find this show. Like Jeannine said, you can also find Morgan Hasn't Seen on this very feed. And you can find this feed on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Castbox, Google Podcasts, and a bunch of other places where you find your audio podcasts. Leave those 5-star rating reviews on Apple Podcasts. It helps with the listings and the algorithms and all those fancy techie words that Apple know about, but I really don't know that much about. What I know about is old horror movies and talking about them. Or at least I like to think I know about that. People probably have a different opinion. A contradictory opinion. Who am I to say? But you can find me on Twitter at the Purple Don with a 3 instead of the E in the Because Jeannine.
3 is the magic number.
Or on Instagram at just the Purple Don. You find the show on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Talk to us about Phantom of the Opera. Talk to us about silent horror. Do you want Jeannine to come back on this show soon to cover the Scandinavian witch half documentary movie Haxan, which is a movie that I've really wanted to watch for so long.
Oh,
Just haven't.
All the sighs.
I was truly talking to Jeannine about doing a Morgan Hasn't Seen series on silent Scandinavian horror. Just because there's a good few that I really want to watch. There's at least 4 that I really want to watch. Haxan being one of them.
I'll think on it.
I'm just talking nonsense as far as you're concerned right now, aren't I? Which makes a lot of sense.
Morgan. No.
That makes a lot of sense because that's what I usually do. Yeah, there we have it. For Lon Chaney, for Mary Philbin, for director Rupert Julian, who has absolutely none of the artistic talent of F.W. Murnau and Robert Vine, or any other European silent horror director of the time, including those Scandinavian people. Yay! Sorry,
exactly
I'm really annoying
what you're
Jeannine.
Talking about right now. Mm-hmm.
I'm really annoying Jeannine right now.
Never, darling.
There you go. Until next episode, which is episode 70. 70 of them.
Woo!
70 of them. We have been talking about Phantom of the Opera 1925. Go and watch it. Make sure you find a version that looks pretty good and stick with it if you enjoy it, because that's the best you're going to get when it comes to Phantom of the Opera, I'm afraid. It's been messed about too much. Until then, guys. Jeannine, are we going to do what we always do on Morgan Hasn't Seen?
Sure,
To finish.
do it.
Let's do it. There you go. 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.